The year was 2287, and humanity had finally made its place among the stars. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars stream past the window. He was 32 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. Once, he had been a fighter pilot for Earth. Now, he was head of security for a diplomatic mission. "Captain Morrison, we're picking up something strange," said the communications officer, a young woman named Lisa Grant. Her face looked worried as she stared at her screen. Jake walked over to her station. "What is it?" "A distress signal. It's coming from a ship about 2 hours away. The signal says it's a Valtherian vessel." Jake felt his heart beat faster. The Valtherians were one of the most powerful races in the Galactic Coalition. They had been traveling through space for thousands of years while humans were still learning to make fire. If a Valtherian ship was in trouble, that meant serious danger. "Get Ambassador Carter up here," Jake said. A few minutes later, Ambassador Daniel Carter arrived on the bridge. He was a tall man with gray hair and a calm voice that made people trust him. "What's the situation?" "A Valtherian ship is sending a distress call," Jake explained. "They're under attack." Carter looked at the screen, thinking carefully. "Our orders are to reach the peace conference on time. We can't afford delays." "With respect, sir, if we ignore this call and someone dies, the Valtherians will never forgive us. This could destroy any chance of better relations with them." Carter was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "You're right. Set course for the distress signal. Captain Morrison, prepare your security team." Jake didn't waste time. He ran to the armory and gathered his team of 6 security officers. They put on their combat suits and grabbed their weapons. Within 20 minutes, they were in a small shuttle, flying toward the Valtherian ship. As they got closer, Jake could see the battle. The Valtherian royal cruiser was beautiful, with silver metal that seemed to glow. But now it was damaged, with holes in its side and smoke pouring out. 3 ugly black ships circled it like sharks, firing weapons that lit up the darkness of space. "Those are Krell Raiders," said Lieutenant Ben Hayes, Jake's second in command. "Nasty pieces of work. They kill for money and fun." "How many do you think are on that Valtherian ship?" asked another team member. "Too many," Jake said. "But we don't have a choice. Lisa, tell the Horizon's Edge to call for backup. We're going in." Jake was a good pilot. He flew the shuttle through the debris floating in space, dodging enemy fire. The Krell ships noticed them, and 2 broke away to attack. Jake twisted the shuttle in ways that made his team hold on to their seats. 30 seconds to docking," he shouted. The shuttle shook as enemy weapons hit its shields. Warning lights flashed red. Jake gritted his teeth and pushed the engines harder. The shuttle slammed into the Valtherian ship's emergency airlock, and the magnetic clamps grabbed hold. "Go, go, go!" Jake yelled. The team rushed through the airlock. Inside the Valtherian ship, emergency lights cast everything in red. The walls were covered in strange writing that Jake couldn't read. Bodies of Valtherian crew members lay on the floor. Jake felt sick, but kept moving. "They went toward the safe room," Ben said, looking at his scanner. "I'm reading life signs that way." They ran through the corridors. Around a corner, they found 4 Krell Raiders. The aliens were big, with gray skin covered in scars and armor. They carried large guns and roared when they saw the humans. Jake and his team opened fire. The fight was quick and brutal. Humans might be weaker than many alien species, but they trained hard and fought smart. Within seconds, all 4 Krell were down. "Keep moving," Jake ordered. They found more Krell as they went deeper into the ship. Each fight was dangerous, but Jake's team worked together perfectly. Finally, they reached a heavy door with Valtherian symbols on it. The safe room. "Ben, can you open it?" Ben pulled out a tool and started working on the lock. "Give me a minute." Behind them, Jake could hear more Krell coming. "We don't have a minute. Everyone, cover that corridor." The team formed a line, weapons ready. The sounds of running feet got louder. Then the Krell appeared, at least a dozen of them. The corridor exploded with weapons fire. Jake felt the heat of enemy shots pass close to his head. One of his team members, Officer Chris Lee, got hit in the shoulder and went down. "Hold the line!" Jake shouted, firing his weapon in controlled bursts. "Got it!" Ben yelled. The door slid open. "Everyone inside, now!" The team rushed through the door, dragging Chris with them. Ben slammed the door shut just as the Krell reached it. They started pounding on the other side. Jake turned around and saw what they had fought so hard to reach. The safe room was small but elegant. 3 Valtharian guards lay on the floor, wounded but alive, and standing in the center was a woman unlike anyone Jake had ever seen. She was tall and slim, with skin that looked like silver touched by moonlight. Her eyes were a deep violet color that seemed to glow in the dim light. She wore robes that might have once been white, but were now torn and stained. Despite everything, she stood straight and calm, like a queen. "I am Princess Lyria Valshara," she said in perfect English, her voice musical but strong. "You are human." "Captain Jake Morrison, Earth Defense Force," Jake said quickly. "We need to get you out of here. Can you walk?" "I can fight," she replied, and Jake noticed she held a slim weapon in her hand. "That's good, because we're going to need everyone fighting to get back to our shuttle." The pounding on the door got louder. Jake looked at his team. Chris was hurt, but could still move. The 3 Valtharian guards were in worse shape, and the Krell were about to break through. "Listen up," Jake said. "We have one shot at this. Ben, help the Valtharian guards. Chris, you're with me on point. Princess, stay in the middle of the group. We move fast and we don't stop for anything. Understood?" Everyone nodded, even the wounded Valtharians who probably didn't speak much English but understood the tone of command. The door started to bend inward. Jake took a deep breath. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Ben opened the door, and Jake threw 2 grenades into the corridor. The explosions sent Krell flying. Jake charged forward, firing his weapon. The team followed, moving as one unit through the smoke and chaos. They fought their way back through the ship. The princess moved with grace, her weapon firing with deadly accuracy. Jake was impressed. She wasn't just royalty, she was a warrior. They reached the shuttle airlock just as a massive explosion rocked the Valtharian ship. "The reactor's going critical," Ben shouted. "We have maybe 2 minutes." Jake practically threw everyone into the shuttle. He jumped into the pilot's seat and undocked from the dying ship. The shuttle shot away from the Valtharian cruiser just as it exploded in a ball of fire. The Krell ships, seeing their prize destroyed, turned and fled into the darkness of space. In the distance, Jake could see coalition warships arriving, but they were too late to help with the fight. Jake set course for the horizon's edge. His hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. He looked back at the passenger area. The princess was helping Ben treat the wounded Valtharians with supplies from the medical kit. She looked up and met Jake's eyes. "You saved my life, Captain Morrison. My father will hear of this." Jake just nodded, not knowing what to say. He was just a soldier doing his job. He had no idea that this rescue would change his entire life, connecting him to an alien princess and pulling him into a story bigger than anything he had ever imagined. The planet Valthara Prime hung in space like a purple jewel. Jake pressed his face against the shuttle window, trying to take it all in. Massive towers made of crystal reached toward the sky, catching the light of 2 suns and throwing rainbows across the city below. In the center of it all, the Imperial Palace floated in the air, held up by technology that humans were still trying to understand. "Impressive, isn't it?" Ambassador Carter said, sitting beside Jake. "That's one word for it," Jake replied. He felt nervous, though he tried not to show it. 3 days had passed since the rescue, 3 days of medical checks, report writing, and waiting. Now they were finally here, summoned by the Emperor himself. The shuttle landed on a platform that seemed to be made of light itself. As they stepped out, Jake saw hundreds of Valtharians watching from balconies and windows. News of the rescue had spread fast. A human had saved their princess. Some looked curious. Others looked less friendly. A tall Valtharian male approached them. He wore armor that looked ceremonial, but probably still worked in a fight. "Ambassador Carter, Captain Morrison, I am Commander Sevrek of the Imperial Guard. The Emperor is waiting." They followed him through halls that made Jake feel small. Everything was beautiful but alien. The walls seemed to shift colors as they walked past. Music played from somewhere, but Jake couldn't see any instruments. Other Valtharians stopped to stare at them, whispering in their own language. Finally, they entered a massive throne room. The ceiling was so high that Jake couldn't see the top. At the far end, on a throne that looked like it was made from starlight, sat Emperor Theron Valshara. Jake had seen pictures, but they didn't capture the reality. The Emperor was ancient, maybe thousands of years old, but he looked strong and sharp. His silver skin had patterns on it like scars or tattoos. His eyes were the same violet as his daughter's, but colder, measuring everything they saw. Princess Lyria stood beside her father's throne. She wore new robes now, pure white with silver thread that made patterns like constellations. She looked like she belonged in a painting, not standing in the same room as someone like Jake. "Approach," the Emperor said. His voice filled the room without being loud. Jake and Ambassador Carter walked forward. Carter knew what to do. He bowed deeply. Jake copied him, feeling awkward. "Captain Jake Morrison," the Emperor said. "You saved my daughter's life." "I was just doing my duty, Your Majesty," Jake said. "Duty?" The Emperor seemed to taste the word. "You flew into battle against superior forces. You boarded a dying ship. You fought through killers to reach a safe room, then fought your way back out. All for strangers. This is more than duty." Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he stayed quiet. "In recognition of your courage and sacrifice, I bestow upon you the Star of Valthara, our highest civilian honor." A Valtharian stepped forward carrying a small box. Inside was a crystal shaped like a star. It glowed with soft blue light. The Emperor stood and walked down from his throne. He was tall, taller than Jake. He took the star and placed it in Jake's hand. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Jake managed to say. "That is not all," the Emperor said. He turned to face the crowd of nobles and officials who had gathered. "There is an ancient law among our people. When someone saves an heir to the throne from certain death, that person may be claimed by the royal family. It is a bond of blood and honor." Jake felt his stomach drop. He didn't like where this was going. "Therefore," the Emperor continued, "I declare that Captain Jake Morrison shall be betrothed to my daughter, Princess Lyria Valshara. They will be married in 1 month's time, joining human and Valtharian blood for the first time in history." The room exploded with noise. Some Valtharians cheered, others shouted in anger. Jake couldn't hear any of it clearly. His ears were ringing. He looked at Ambassador Carter, who looked just as shocked. Then he looked at Princess Lyria. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wide. She hadn't known this was coming either. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Carter said loudly, trying to be heard over the crowd. "This is a great honor, but perhaps Captain Morrison should have time to consider—" "The decree has been made," the Emperor said firmly. "It is our way." Jake found his voice. "With respect, sir, I appreciate the honor, but I can't just marry someone I barely know. I saved the princess because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted a reward." The room went silent. Everyone stared at Jake. He had just argued with the Emperor in front of his entire court. That probably wasn't smart, but Emperor Theron didn't look angry. If anything, he looked amused. "You are direct. I like that. Very well, human. In our tradition, there is a courtship period, 1 lunar cycle. You will stay here as a guest of the palace. You will get to know my daughter. At the end of that time, if you still refuse, we will discuss other options. But know this. Refusing would bring dishonor to my family and could harm the alliance between our peoples. It wasn't really a choice, and everyone knew it. Jake felt trapped. He looked at Princess Lyria again. She stepped forward and spoke for the first time. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I understand this is not what you wanted. It is not what I expected either. But my father's word is law, and this law is ancient and sacred to our people. I ask only that you give us the chance to know each other before you decide. Is that not fair?" Her voice was kind, not demanding. Jake realized she was trying to help him, to make this easier somehow. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. 1 month, he said. "I'll stay for 1 month." The Emperor nodded. "It is agreed. Commander Severek, show Captain Morrison to his quarters." As Jake was led away, he heard the whispers start again. He didn't need to speak their language to know what they were saying. A human marrying into the royal family. Some thought it was wonderful. Others thought it was an insult. His quarters turned out to be a suite of rooms bigger than his entire apartment back on Earth. Windows looked out over the floating city. Strange plants grew in pots, their leaves moving even though there was no wind. A bed that adjusted to his body weight. Technology and luxury everywhere he looked. Jake sat down on the bed and put his head in his hands. What had he gotten himself into? There was a knock on the door. "Come in," he called. Princess Lyria entered, alone this time. She closed the door behind her and stood there awkwardly, like she didn't know what to say either. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "My father can be decisive." "Does he always decide who you're going to marry?" Jake asked, more harshly than he meant to. Lyria didn't get angry. She walked to the window and looked out at her city. "In our culture, marriage among the royal family is always political. I knew I would marry someone chosen for me. I just thought it would be another Valtherian noble, not a human I had just met." "You could have said no," Jake pointed out. "Could I?" Lyria turned to face him. "You heard my father. Refusing would dishonor the family and damage the alliance with your people. Would you want to be responsible for that?" She had a point. Jake sighed. "So what do we do now?" "Now we try," Lyria said. "We spend time together. We talk. We learn about each other. Maybe we find that we can make this work. Maybe we find that we cannot. But we try." Jake looked at her carefully, really looked at her for the first time since the rescue. She was beautiful, yes, but that wasn't what caught his attention. It was the intelligence in her eyes. The way she stood straight even though this situation was probably as uncomfortable for her as it was for him. The kindness in her voice when she spoke. "Okay," he said. "We try. But I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Be honest with me. If you hate this, tell me. If you want out, tell me. Don't just go along with it because your father said so. I need to know what you really think." Lyria smiled, and it made her whole face light up. "I promise, and I ask the same from you." "Deal." She moved toward the door, then stopped. "Tomorrow. I would like to show you the palace gardens. They are very beautiful, and perhaps we can talk more there." "I'd like that," Jake said, and he was surprised to find that he meant it. After she left, Jake walked to the window and looked out at the alien city. Somewhere far below, he could see crowds gathering. Word of the betrothal was spreading fast. Soon, everyone in the galaxy would know. His face would be on every news screen. His life would never be the same. But as he thought about Princess Lyria's smile and her promise to be honest with him, Jake felt something unexpected. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Maybe, just maybe, he could make this work. Of course, he had no idea that there were people in the palace who would do anything to stop this marriage. People who thought humans were not worthy of Valtharian royalty. People who were already planning their first move against him. The gardens of the Imperial Palace were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Plants from 100 different worlds grew together in impossible harmony. Some trees had leaves that sang when the wind blew through them. Flowers changed colors as he walked past. A small stream ran through the center, its water flowing uphill in defiance of gravity. "This is amazing," Jake said, watching a butterfly the size of his hand float past on wings that looked like stained glass. Princess Lyria walked beside him, her white robes trailing on the silver grass. "My mother planted this garden," she said quietly. "She died when I was young, but I still come here to think." "I'm sorry," Jake said. "I lost my mom, too, a few years ago. Cancer." Lyria looked at him with understanding. "Then you know what it is like to miss someone every day." They walked in comfortable silence for a while. It had been 3 days since the Emperor's announcement, and Jake was starting to relax around Lyria. She wasn't what he had expected. She was smart, asking him questions about Earth and humanity that made him think. She had a quiet sense of humor that caught him off guard, and she was honest, just like she had promised. "Tell me about your home," Lyria said. "What is Earth like?" "Crowded," Jake said with a laugh. "Loud, messy, beautiful. We've got oceans and mountains and cities that reach into the sky. Nothing as fancy as here, but it's home." "Do you miss it?" Jake thought about it. "Yeah, I miss the food. The real sun, not artificial light. I miss my sister Katie. She's studying to be a doctor." He smiled. "She's going to laugh so hard when she finds out about all this." "Will she approve?" Lyria asked. "Of you? Probably. Of the situation? She'll think it's crazy." Jake looked at Lyria. "What about you? If you could choose anyone to marry, would it be someone like me?" Lyria was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I never thought about it. I always knew my marriage would be arranged. I hoped it would be someone kind, someone intelligent, someone who could see me as more than just a princess." She met his eyes. "So far, you have been all of those things." Jake felt his face get warm. "Thanks. You're pretty easy to talk to yourself." Over the next 2 weeks, they spent more time together. Lyria showed him the palace library, where books from ancient times were kept in rooms that preserved them perfectly. Jake taught her about human music, playing songs from his portable player. She loved the rock music, which surprised him. "It has passion," she explained. "Valtharian music is beautiful but calm. This is alive." They trained together in the combat arena. Lyria was skilled with Valtharian weapons, moving like water. Jake showed her human fighting techniques, the dirty tricks humans had learned from centuries of war. She was a fast learner and managed to flip him onto his back more than once. "You fight with honor," she said, helping him up after one match. "I fight to win," Jake replied, grinning, "but I try not to be a jerk about it." Slowly, something was growing between them. Jake found himself looking forward to seeing her each morning. He liked the way she laughed, a clear sound like bells. He admired her strength and her kindness to everyone she met, from the Emperor to the servants. But not everyone was happy about their growing closeness. Lord Kalen Vor was a high-ranking noble in the Valtharian court. He was handsome by Valtharian standards, with silver skin that seemed to glow brighter than others. He had been trying to court Princess Lyria for years, convinced that he would eventually marry her and gain more power. Now a human had taken his place. A human. A creature that had been in space for less than 100 years. It was an insult beyond measure. "This cannot stand," Kalen said to the group of nobles gathered in his private chambers. There were 5 of them, all from old families who believed in Valtharian superiority. "What can we do?" asked Lady Vera, an older woman with cold eyes. "The Emperor has made his decree." "The Emperor can be convinced to change his mind," Kalen said. "We just need to show him that this human is not worthy, not suitable for our princess." "How?" another noble asked. Kalen smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Leave that to me." The next day, Jake was walking through the palace when he noticed something strange. Valtharians, who had been friendly before, now avoided him. When he entered a room, conversations stopped. He heard whispers and saw cold looks. "Is it just me? Or did everyone suddenly decide they hate me?" Jake asked Commander Sevrek, who had become something like a friend. Sevrek frowned. "There are rumors spreading through the court. Lies about you and your intentions." "What kind of lies?" "That you planned the Krell attack yourself. That you're using the princess to gain power for Earth. That you're a spy sent to weaken the Empire." Sevrek shook his head. "I do not believe them, but some do." Jake felt anger burn in his chest. "Who's spreading these rumors?" "I have my suspicions, but no proof." That evening, Jake was supposed to meet Lyria at a cultural festival in the city below the palace. It was a celebration of Valtharian art and history. Lyria wanted to show him her culture at its best. The festival was beautiful. Lights floated in the air without strings. Musicians played instruments that created sound and color together. Dancers moved in patterns that told ancient stories. Jake and Lyria walked through it all, and for a while, Jake forgot about the rumors and the politics. He was just enjoying being with her. "Thank you for showing me this," Jake said. "It's incredible. I wanted you to see that we are more than just warriors and politicians," Lyria said. "We are artists and dreamers, too." "I'm starting to understand that." They stopped at a stand selling sweet cakes that melted on the tongue. Lyria bought two and handed one to Jake. As they ate, standing close together in the crowd, Jake realized something. He was falling for her. Really falling for her. This wasn't just about duty or politics anymore. He cared about her. He was about to tell her when he saw the glint of metal in the crowd. Time seemed to slow down. Jake saw a figure in dark clothes, arm raised. In their hand was a weapon, aimed at Lyria. Jake's combat training took over. He grabbed Lyria and pulled her down just as the weapon fired. The energy bolt sizzled through the air where her head had been a second before. The crowd erupted in panic. People ran in all directions. Jake covered Lyria with his body and looked for the attacker. He saw three of them, all moving toward them through the chaos. "Stay down," Jake said to Lyria. "I can fight," she protested. "I know you can, but right now I need you safe." Imperial guards appeared, weapons drawn. The attackers tried to run. Two were caught immediately, but the third fought back. Jake stood up, putting himself between the attacker and Lyria. The attacker fired at him. Jake dodged and rushed forward, years of training guiding his movements. He disarmed the attacker with two quick strikes and pinned them to the ground. More guards arrived and took the attacker away. Commander Sevrek ran up to them, his face full of worry. "Princess, are you hurt?" "I am fine, thanks to Jake," Lyria said. She looked at Jake with something new in her eyes. Respect, yes, but also something deeper. "You saved me again." "Just doing my job," Jake said, but his heart was pounding. They had come so close to losing her. Back at the palace, the Emperor questioned the captured attackers. They were hired killers, paid well to murder the princess. But they wouldn't say who hired them, too afraid of their employer. "Someone wants you dead," Jake said to Lyria later that night. They were in her private chambers, surrounded by guards. "And I don't think it's random." "You think it's connected to our betrothal," Lyria said. It wasn't a question. "It's too much of a coincidence. Someone doesn't want us to marry." Lyria stood and started pacing. There are many in the court who oppose this union. But to try to kill me? That is treason of the highest order. We need to find out who's behind this, Jake said, before they try again. Agreed, but we must be careful. If the traitor is someone powerful, they will have allies and resources. Over the next few days, Jake and Lyria worked together to investigate. They looked at financial records, studied the attackers' backgrounds, and talked to people who might know something. Sevrek helped them, along with Lieutenant Arya Stone, a human officer from the embassy who had training in intelligence work. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Money had moved through secret accounts. All three attackers had connections to the same district of the city, where Lord Kalen Vor owned property. It wasn't proof, but it was suspicious. We need to be smart about this, Arya said. If Kalen is behind it and we accuse him without solid proof, he could turn the court against you. Then we need to catch him doing something else, Jake said. Make him reveal himself. How? Lyria asked. Jake thought for a moment. We let him think he's winning. We pretend to be having problems. Make him confident enough to try something bigger. It was risky, but they didn't have many options. So Jake and Lyria started acting like they were arguing in public. They made sure people saw them looking unhappy. Rumors spread that the human and the princess were not getting along. Kalen took the bait. One night, Arya caught one of his servants trying to plant evidence in Jake's quarters. Evidence that would make it look like Jake was planning to betray the Empire. They had him. But before they could tell the Emperor, something terrible happened. The attacker who had been captured at the festival was found dead in his cell, poisoned. Someone had killed him before he could talk. This is bigger than we thought, Sevrek said, looking at the body. Someone in the palace guard helped with this. Someone we trust. Jake felt cold. The conspiracy went deep, deeper than just one jealous noble. And whoever was behind it had just shown they would kill anyone who got in their way. That night, Jake and Lyria stood together on her balcony, looking out at the city. The investigation had brought them closer. They had worked together, trusted each other with their lives. And through it all, Jake's feelings had only grown stronger. Are you scared? Lyria asked quietly. Terrified, Jake admitted, but not just for me, for you. If something happened to you, nothing will happen, Lyria said. She took his hand, her silver skin cool against his. We will stop whoever is doing this, together. Jake squeezed her hand. Together. He didn't know that the real threat was still to come, that the conspirators were planning something much bigger than just murder, something that would put the entire planet at risk and force Jake and Lyria to make impossible choices. The evidence was damning. Jake and Lyria laid it all out before Emperor Theron in his private chambers. Financial records showing money moving to the attackers, testimony from the captured servant, security footage showing Lord Kalen Vor meeting with suspicious figures in the dead of night. This is treason, the Emperor said, his voice cold as ice. We need to arrest him now, Jake urged, before he realizes we know. But the Emperor shook his head. It is not that simple. Kalen comes from one of the oldest families in the Empire. He has allies in the court, powerful ones. If I move against him without presenting this evidence publicly, it could split the court in two. So what do we do? Lyria asked. I will call a council meeting tomorrow. All the high nobles will attend. We will present the evidence there, and justice will be done in front of everyone. Jake didn't like it. Waiting gave Kalen time to prepare, to run, or to do something desperate. But this wasn't his planet or his rules. He had to trust the Emperor's judgment. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He stood in his quarters looking out at the city lights when his door chimed. It was Lyria, wearing a simple robe instead of her formal attire. I couldn't sleep either, she said. Come in. They sat together on the balcony, neither speaking for a while. Finally, Lyria broke the silence. "Are you sorry?" she asked. "That you saved me that day? Look at all the trouble it has brought you." Jake looked at her, surprised. "Are you serious? Lyria, saving you was the best thing I've ever done. Not because of the honor or any of this royal stuff, because I met you." "Jake, I mean it. These past few weeks, getting to know you, working with you, I've realized something. I don't want to marry you because your father said so. I want to marry you because I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Lyria's violet eyes went wide, then soft. "I feel the same way," she whispered. "I was trying not to. I told myself it was just the situation, the pressure. But it's not. I love you, Jake Morrison." They kissed then, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Jake said, "we face it together." "Together," Lyria agreed. The next morning, the council chamber filled with nobles. It was a massive room with a round table in the center. The emperor sat at the head, with Lyria on his right and Jake standing behind her. Lord Kalen Vor sat across from them, looking calm and confident. Too confident, Jake thought. Something was wrong. "We are here to address charges of treason," the emperor began. "Lord Kalen Vor, you have been accused of hiring assassins to murder Princess Lyria. What say you?" Kalen stood, his face showing shock that looked almost real. "This is outrageous. I would never harm the princess. I have served this empire faithfully for 300 years. "Then explain this," the emperor said, and Commander Sevrek presented the evidence. Kalen looked at each piece, his expression growing darker. Then he did something Jake didn't expect. He laughed. "Very clever," Kalen said. "Yes, I tried to have the princess killed, but not because I hate her, because I love this empire too much to see it weakened by alliance with humans." The room erupted. Some nobles shouted in anger at Kalen. Others shouted in agreement. Jake realized with horror that almost half the room seemed to support Kalen's views. "You admit to treason," the emperor roared. "I admit to trying to save our empire from a mistake," Kalen replied. He looked directly at Jake. "Humans are weak, primitive. They have been in space for less than a century. They have no place in our royal bloodline." "The humans saved your princess when your own ships could not," Sevrek said angrily. "One human got lucky," Kalen shot back. "That does not make them our equals." The argument grew louder. Jake could see the council splitting before his eyes. Some supported the emperor and the alliance. Others sided with Kalen and tradition. Then Kalen played his final card. "Your Majesty, I invoke the right of challenge. Let the matter be settled not by words, but by combat. If this human is truly worthy of the princess, let him prove it." The emperor's face went pale. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. Ancient law allows it. Or do we ignore our laws when they are inconvenient?" Jake leaned forward and whispered to Lyria. "What's he talking about?" "The right of challenge is an old tradition," Lyria whispered back, looking worried. "If two nobles dispute a matter of honor, they can settle it through combat. The winner is judged to be right by the gods." "That's insane." "That's our law." Jake looked at Kalen, who was smiling now. The noble was enhanced with combat implants, trained for centuries. He was betting that Jake couldn't beat him, and if Jake lost, the betrothal would be canceled, and Kalen would go free. "I accept," Jake said loudly. "Jake, no!" Lyria grabbed his arm. "He'll kill you." "Maybe. But if I don't fight, he wins anyway. At least this way, we have a chance." The emperor looked torn. "Captain Morrison, you do not have to do this." "Yes, I do," Jake said, "because if I back down now, everyone will think humans are cowards. And I'm not going to let that happen." The combat would take place in 1 hour in the palace arena. Jake went to prepare, with Lyria and Sevrek following. "He has 300 years of training," Lyria said, her voice tight with worry. "Enhanced strength and speed. You cannot beat him in a fair fight." "Then I won't fight fair," Jake said. He looked at Sevrek. "What are the rules?" "Any weapon, any tactic. Fight until one yields or dies." "Good. Then I'm going to use every dirty trick humans have ever learned." Jake armed himself with a simple sword and a combat knife. He didn't want armor. It would slow him down, and speed was his only advantage. As he prepared, Lyria touched his face gently. "Come back to me," she said. "I will," Jake promised. "We have a wedding to plan, remember?" The arena was packed with spectators. It seemed like everyone in the palace wanted to watch. Jake walked out onto the sand floor, his heart pounding. Across from him, Kalen appeared, wearing light armor and carrying a blade that hummed with energy. "Any last words, human?" Kalen called out. "Yeah," Jake said. "I hope you're ready to lose." The fight began. Kalen moved like lightning, his enhanced body closing the distance in a heartbeat. Jake barely dodged the first strike, feeling the energy blade pass close to his face. He rolled away and came up fighting. The noble was faster and stronger, but Jake had fought dangerous opponents before. He used the arena itself as a weapon, kicking sand into Kalen's eyes, using the pillars for cover. When Kalen expected high attacks, Jake went low. When Kalen thought Jake would retreat, Jake charged forward. But it wasn't enough. Kalen's blade cut across Jake's shoulder, sending pain shooting through his arm. Another strike caught his leg, making him stumble. Jake was losing, and he knew it. Then Jake remembered something Lyria had said during their training. Valtharians fight with honor. They follow patterns, ancient forms of combat. But humans fight to survive. The next time Kalen charged, Jake did something no Valtharian warrior would do. He threw his sword at Kalen's face. When Kalen batted it away, Jake rushed in with his knife, going for Kalen's unarmored joints. The blade sank into the gap at Kalen's knee. Kalen screamed and fell. Before he could recover, Jake was on him, knife at his throat. "Yield," Jake said, breathing hard. "Never," Kalen spat. "Then die," Jake said, and for a moment, he meant it. This noble had tried to kill Lyria, had split the empire, had forced this fight. But then Jake stopped. He looked up at the crowd, at Lyria's face full of hope and fear. If he killed Kalen, he would prove the noble right. He would show that humans were just violent savages. "No," Jake said. He stood up and stepped back, lowering his knife. "I won't kill you. I'm not going to prove your point for you." The crowd was silent. Then the Emperor stood. "The challenge is won. Captain Morrison has shown not only strength but mercy. Lord Kalen Vor, you are stripped of your titles and lands. You will be exiled from Valthera Prime for the rest of your days." Guards moved forward to take Kalen away. As they dragged him past Jake, the noble hissed, "This isn't over. You've made more enemies than you know." Then, as if to prove his words, alarms started blaring throughout the palace. "Ships entering the atmosphere," someone shouted. "Krell raiders, dozens of them." Jake's blood went cold. This had been Kalen's real plan all along. The challenge was a distraction. While everyone was watching the fight, the Krell were attacking. And somehow they had gotten past the planetary defenses. The palace shook as the first Krell ships began their attack. Through the windows, Jake could see explosions lighting up the purple sky. The beautiful floating towers of the city were under fire. "How did they get through our defenses?" the Emperor demanded. Commander Sevrek was already at a communication panel. His face went pale as he read the reports. "Someone gave them our defense codes. The orbital platforms are offline. The Krell have a clear path to the planet." Jake grabbed Lyria's hand. "Kalen, he planned this whole thing. The challenge was meant to keep everyone distracted while his allies sabotaged the defenses." "We need to evacuate the palace," Lyria said. "No," the Emperor said firmly. "If I run, the people will panic. We stay and fight." Jake looked at the Emperor with new respect. The old ruler might be stubborn, but he had courage. Then we need to organize a defense, fast. Within minutes, Jake found himself in the palace command center, surrounded by Valtherian military officers who looked at him with suspicion and doubt. He was just a human, after all. What did he know about defending their world? The Krell are landing troops in 3 locations, one officer reported. Downtown, the spaceport, and the industrial sector. They're trying to take strategic locations, Jake said, studying the tactical display. If they control the spaceport, we can't get reinforcements. If they take the industrial sector, they can hold the entire city hostage. What do you suggest, human? Another officer asked, his tone making it clear he didn't expect a good answer. We split our forces, Jake said, but not evenly. The Krell expect us to defend everything equally. Instead, we give them the spaceport, let them think they've won something. That's insane, the officer protested. Is it? Jake pointed at the map. The spaceport is isolated. If they take it, we can surround them. Meanwhile, we hit them hard at the other 2 locations with everything we have. We save the city and trap part of their force in a location they can't escape from. There was silence. Then Commander Sevrek spoke up. The human is right. It's a bold strategy, but it could work. The Emperor, watching from his throne, nodded. Do it. Captain Morrison, you will coordinate the defense. Commander Sevrek, support him with our forces. Jake got to work. He contacted the human embassy and got Ambassador Carter to send every security officer they had. He organized civilian defense units, teaching them quick and dirty tactics that humans had used in street fighting. He positioned forces in places the Krell wouldn't expect, using the city's unique floating architecture against them. Meanwhile, Lyria gathered her personal guard. I'm going to retake the North Orbital platform, she announced. Absolutely not, the Emperor said. It's too dangerous. Father, if we can get even one platform back online, we can start shooting down their ships. We have to try. Jake wanted to go with her, but he was needed to coordinate the overall defense. Their eyes met across the command center, saying what words couldn't. Be safe. Come back to me. Then she was gone, leading her team toward the shuttle bay. The battle for the city was brutal. The Krell were fierce fighters, caring nothing for their own lives or the lives of others. They burned buildings and killed anyone who got in their way. But Jake's strategy was working. By concentrating their forces, the Valtherians were pushing the Krell back in 2 locations. The industrial sector is secure, Sevrek reported. Downtown is still contested, but we're gaining ground. Good. Send reinforcements to... Jake stopped as a new alarm sounded. More Krell ships incoming, an officer reported. They're heading for the palace. Jake cursed. They're trying to cut off the head. If they kill the Emperor, the defense falls apart. We have minimal forces here, Sevrek said. Most of our troops are in the city. Jake thought fast. Then we evacuate the Emperor to the secure bunker and hold them off with whatever we have. I will not hide, the Emperor said. Your Majesty, with respect, if you die, your people have no leader. Get to safety. Let us do our jobs. For a moment, Jake thought the Emperor would refuse. Then the old ruler nodded. Very well, but I expect you to survive this, Captain Morrison. My daughter would never forgive me if you died. As the Emperor was escorted to the bunker, Jake gathered every fighter he could find, palace guards, embassy security, even some servants who knew how to use weapons. They had maybe 50 people against Krell ships that would be carrying hundreds. This is going to be interesting, said Lieutenant Arya Stone, checking her weapon. That's one word for it, Jake replied. The Krell dropships landed on the palace platforms. Armored raiders poured out, roaring and firing. Jake's small force met them with everything they had. It was chaos. Jake fought like he had never fought before, his training and instincts keeping him alive by seconds. Beside him, Arya took down 3 Krell with precise shots. A palace guard saved Jake's life by tackling a Krell who was about to stab him from behind. They were losing ground, being pushed back into the palace itself. Jake realized they couldn't win this fight. There were too many enemies. Then, like a miracle, the orbital platforms started firing. Krell ships exploded in the sky. The dropships trying to land were shot down before they could deploy more troops. Jake looked up and saw one platform's lights come back on. "Lyria did it," he breathed. With air support, the tide turned. The Krell on the palace platforms found themselves trapped, and Jake's forces pushed them back. Within an hour, the palace was secure. Jake stood in the command center, exhausted and bleeding from a dozen minor wounds, as reports came in. The city was safe. The Krell were retreating or surrendering, and coalition reinforcements had finally arrived to finish the job. "Captain Morrison, you did it," Sevrek said, clasping Jake's shoulder. "You saved us." "We all did," Jake said. "Is Lyria—" "Her shuttle is landing now," Sevrek said with a smile. Jake ran to the landing platform. He didn't care about protocol or dignity. He just needed to see her, to know she was safe. Lyria stepped off the shuttle, her white robes torn and stained, but her head held high. When she saw Jake, she ran to him. They met in the middle, holding each other tight. "I was so worried," Jake said into her hair. "I knew you would be fine," Lyria replied. "You're too stubborn to die." They pulled back just enough to look at each other. "I love you," Jake said. "I love you too," Lyria replied. "And when this is all over, we're getting married. No more delays, no more politics. Just us." "That sounds perfect." But first, there was work to do. Over the next few days, Jake and Lyria helped coordinate the cleanup and rebuilding. Lord Kalen Vor and his co-conspirators were found and arrested. Evidence showed they had promised the Krell access to Valtherian space and technology in exchange for helping overthrow the Emperor. The trials were swift and public. Kalen and the others were exiled to a prison colony on the edge of known space. The Empire could begin to heal. A week later, Jake stood in his quarters, looking at himself in the mirror. He wore a suit that blended human and Valtherian styles, black with silver embroidery that caught the light. Today was his wedding day. Ambassador Carter came to check on him. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Jake admitted. "This is really happening." "You're doing the right thing," Carter said. "Not just for the Alliance, but for yourself. I've seen how you two look at each other. That's real love, Jake." There was a knock on the door. It was Katie, Jake's sister, who had arrived from Earth 2 days ago. She wore a beautiful blue dress and had tears in her eyes. "My big brother is getting married to an alien princess," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Mom would have loved this." "Yeah," Jake said softly. "She would have." The wedding ceremony took place in the palace's grand hall. It was filled with people from dozens of worlds. Human and Valtherian traditions mixed together, creating something new and beautiful. Jake stood at the altar, watching Lyria walk toward him. She wore robes of pure white that seemed to glow with their own light. Her silver skin shimmered. Her violet eyes found his and held them. Emperor Theron performed the ceremony, speaking words in Valtherian and English. Jake and Lyria exchanged vows, promising to honor and love each other, to stand together against whatever came. When they kissed, the entire hall erupted in cheers. At the celebration afterward, Jake found himself talking with people he had never imagined meeting. Ambassadors from alien worlds, famous human leaders, scientists and warriors and artists. But the best moment was dancing with Lyria, holding her close as human music played, music she had come to love. "Happy?" she asked. "More than I ever thought possible," Jake replied. Then Commander Sevrek approached with a serious expression. "I apologize for interrupting, but there's something you both need to see." They followed him to a secure room where a holographic message waited. It was from Coalition Intelligence. The officer in the recording looked worried. Princess Lyria, Captain Morrison, we've been analyzing the Krell attack. We've discovered something disturbing. The Krell raiders were supplied and coordinated by a group we've been tracking called the Obsidian Collective. They're a shadow organization that seems to be working to destabilize the Coalition. The message continued. The attack on Valthera Prime was just one move in a much larger plan. We need people we can trust to investigate this group. People who have proven themselves capable and loyal. Would you be willing to take on this mission? The message ended. Jake and Lyria looked at each other. We just got married, Jake said. We deserve a honeymoon. We do, Lyria agreed. But people need us. So we take the mission, Jake said. It wasn't really a question. After a proper honeymoon, Lyria insisted. At least 2 weeks on that beach planet you told me about. Jake laughed. Deal. 1 month later, Jake and Lyria stood on the bridge of their personal ship, the Unity. It was a vessel designed specifically for them, combining human and Valtherian technology. Ambassador Carter had pulled strings to get it made. They were heading toward a distant system where the Obsidian Collective had been reported. It would be dangerous work, but they would face it together. Are you ready? Lyria asked. Jake took her hand, her wedding ring glinting in the light. He thought about everything that had happened. The rescue that started it all. The betrothal he had resented. The love that had grown despite everything. The battles they had fought and won. I'm ready, he said. Whatever comes next, we'll handle it. Together, Lyria said, smiling at their private word. Together, Jake agreed. The Unity jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying them toward new adventures. Jake Morrison, the human who had saved a princess and married her against all odds, was heading into the unknown with the woman he loved. He wouldn't have had it any other way. Back on Valthera Prime, in the palace archives, a new entry was being made in the historical records. It told the story of Captain Jake Morrison, the human who proved that courage and love could bridge any gap, even between species who came from different worlds. It was a story that would inspire others for generations to come. A story about how sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple choice to help someone in need. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Obsidian Collective watched and planned, not knowing that they had just gained 2 enemies who would not rest until the truth was revealed and justice was done. The future was full of challenges and dangers, but Jake and Lyria would face them all, side by side, bound by love and commitment stronger than any imperial decree. Their story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning.